Hi, everybody. Welcome to Mormonish. I'm Rebecca.
I'm Landon.
And this is one of our favorite kind of podcasts to do. It's sort of a breaking news kind of a podcast. We have two wonderful guests with us today. We have a representative of Fairview United. We'll just call you Fairview United. How are you today?
Hi, everyone. Doing great.
Awesome. And we have an attorney representing Fairview United. We have Mark Johnson. How are you this afternoon, Mark?
I'm fine, thank you.
That is just great. Now, this just kind of came up on our radar. We were contacted by Fairview United. We put out, how many do you think in the last week or a couple weeks, Landon? We put out a few different things. Things have been very in motion. Things have been happening as far as what Fairview United has been doing in the town of Fairview. And so this is just kind of the latest installment with a little bit more breaking news, but we're really excited to have the attorney representing the residents group, Fairview United, who can kind of give us some backstory on what's happening and maybe some new information of something that's kind of breaking more currently. So welcome, Mark.
Thank you. Thank you. Oh, for starters, let me apologize for the casual attire. This is Saturday, and
Saturday.
I probably should have been in a suit, but I'm not. Well, first of all, thank you for having us on. Thank you for your coverage. We have tried to keep this matter as above board and procedural as possible, because that's what it is. You know, when I was recently interviewed on Channel 8 in Dallas, WFAA, and that was a point that we made, and I think it came across, was that this has nothing to do with the church itself. This is not a First Amendment issue. This is simply I represent Fairview United, which is a group of homeowners in it's a small town. What are there, like 10,000 people?
10,000 or so, yeah.
Something like that. My parents used to live there, and this is a town that it is small town Texas. It's out in the country. People moved out there because it was out in the country, and things grew up a little bit around it, and that's to be expected. But what wasn't expected was the fact that in some of these people's literally backyard, that there would be a tower that originally was to be approximately 150 feet tall, with a beacon shining into the heavens all night on top of that. And that, one, it conflicted with Fairview's zoning requirements, because for one thing, Fairview has a requirement that's fairly common in Texas, in small town towns, and it's called dark sky. And they want to have dark sky at night. You can see the stars at night. They like it that way. And that's why they moved out there. Well, this beacon lies in the face of everything that the dark sky regulations stand for. And that was why the Fairview United folks, they reached out to me. Originally, I spoke with them about what I felt they could do. And then they asked that I do it after the town council received an application from the church for, it's called a conditional use permit, basically a variance. And the church asked for was permission to have this tower, to build a temple on this property that they already own, and on which there's already, I don't know if it's technically referred to as a church or a meeting place.
Yeah, meeting house is what they call it.
Meeting house.
Yeah.
Meeting house. That's it. Well, they have this meeting house there, and there's no problem. They're good neighbors. It's not a big deal. But then they decided that they wanted to have this temple, and the temple, it would be the largest, one of the largest buildings in Fairview. It would certainly be the highest, and through the height and the light, it conflicted with Fairview's zoning requirements. Well, they had a vote on it with the town council, and that's where I got involved. And it's because say this is the property. This is the LDS property. When they want to have, I don't mean this for the speech, plug for an insurance company, but they have.
It's a great visual.
Yeah.
It's the kind of professional stuff we show on Mormonish. So.
That's right. That's right. They when they asked for this CUP, normally it just has to be approved by a simple majority, so 51% of the members of the town council or of the zoning commission, whoever it is who's reviewing this. Now, take a 200-foot perimeter all the way around this. That is what we refer to as the zoning area or protest zone. That's what we refer to it as. The protest zone, if you have property owners, a certain number of property owners who own property in this 200-foot perimeter, and those properties altogether add up to at least 20% of the whole, which would be the perimeter and the church's property, then that triggers a supermajority requirement. And that's the situation that we find ourselves in, because there were property owners who said, no, we'd rather not have this super tall tower, and we would rather not have this beacon. They filed protests. The city, the problem that we have is if you count all the way around, then over here, the protesting property owners do not own 20% of all of this.
And we're talking about land area of property. That's the issue that's so confusing. When I first read the city code, I thought, oh, so 5 of 9 houses sent in letters. That's, I can do math. That's way more than 20%. Then I started to learn, oh no, we're talking about the amount of property that you own. So that can get a little confusing because the church already owns a huge chunk.
That's right.
And another church, I think. And
you're talking about the area, the linear footage.
Right.
It's very close. If you include the entire 200 feet perimeter, then the protesting folks over here, they have, oh my gosh, I think it's like 18% or 19%.
It wasn't like 17.9 or something. It was
so it's very close.
Yeah.
The problem though is, assume that this over here is the south side. Right on the edge of this property is Stacy Road. And right in the middle of Stacy Road is the border between Fairview and a bordering town called Allen. If you include, and we acknowledge you have to include Stacy Road because the statute says you do. But you should not include the portion of Stacy Road that extends into Allen, and you certainly shouldn't include the portion of the 200-foot perimeter that extends into Allen and there are people who own homes over there. There's a couple of businesses. And if you don't include the property that's in Allen, then these folks over here, they have more than 20%. Mm-hmm.
And as I understand it, because those homes in Allen and property, they aren't on tax rolls in Fairview. They have no legal way to even register a protest. What if all of them said, we don't want the temple this close? They can't even weigh in. So their vote is kind of a non-negative, right? It's almost like an automatic yes, diluting the residents' vote. So it's hard to understand. But then when you do, you're like, that makes complete sense. They should not be counted.
we brought that issue up. We filed an appeal with the zoning board of adjustments.
Yeah, and I think that's the last thing that we had podcasted on as far as where we were at with Fairview United. We had made the announcement that there was something put before the zoning board of adjustments, and they were going to look at that. And then Fairview, the town, had assigned or arranged for some kind of legal help for the zoning board so that they could kind of, because everybody wants this to be correct. I think that's what we should say. The town itself is like, we got to get our ducks in a row and straighten this out. You know, if there's some kind of issue, everybody wants it to be right and done right.
Most definitely. And that's why in our notice of appeal, we asked for two things. One is, okay, ZBA, make it right. Acknowledge that this 5-2 vote, it didn't approve the application, it denied it. That's one thing we asked for. Alternatively, we asked that the ZBA request, well, the city, which in the town, which in turn would ask the county to submit this to the Texas Attorney General's office, because they give opinion letters on matters of state law that are a little squirrely. And this couldn't be squirrelier. You will never see this particular situation happen again, because it could only happen if you have a fairly large piece of property that's asking for a variance. You have only a few houses that are around it. You have it abutting the border with another town, and that other town never gets even notice of the variance. This will never happen again, at least not in my career.
Yeah.
Which is why we want some clarification from the Attorney General's office. But anyway, where we are, we've asked the ZAB to take a look at this and to acknowledge that if you include the properties that are over here on the south side that extend into Allen, then and these are people, they don't receive notice. They couldn't file a protest if they wanted to, because it's not in their town. But what you do is the people on this side, you've just diluted their authority to challenge this, because it's no longer 20%. They would have to have an effectively, I think it's like 24%. Well, that conflicts with the statute. And that's why we filed our notice of appeal. And since then, it was last Thursday, there was a meeting of the town council, and the new mayor, Mr. Hubbard, Dr. Hubbard, he stated to us after the hearing that he wanted us to file a lawsuit. Now, it doesn't have to be super contentious, but it makes sense. They want to have clarity. They want this to be, you have one answer, and that answer is going to apply across the board. And it's not something where the LDS can come back and say, oh, well, that was Johnson. No, it's not me. And I don't want them saying, oh, well, that's the town council, because it's not them. So we say, okay, we'll file a lawsuit, and that's what we've done. We ask for the same relief that we asked from the ZBA. Gosh, I keep saying that wrong. No,
I think that's right. Zoning Board of Adjustments. I know.
ZBA.
I'm mixed up too.
We asked for the same relief, but we acknowledge that a district court judge in Collin County, might be a little bit hesitant to override a city's ruling, a city's zoning order. So we asked for, it's called a declaratory judgment. where all that is a basically doing the same thing that the Attorney General's office would do, and that is to give us to tell us what the effect was of the town council's vote. What does a 5-2 vote mean? Because as I see it, 5-2 does not get the job done for the LDS. 5-2 is because they had to have, they could not have more than 25% voting against the application.
The CUP.
A 5-2 vote is more than 25%.
And that makes sense. And there are 7 members on that council. So a supermajority would have been 6 of them said, yes, that passes. 1 could say no, and that would have passes. But that didn't happen. And so this is a lawsuit. This is the breaking news portion. We should have like little bells going off or something. So this is a lawsuit in addition to that appeal that you filed to the Zoning Board of Adjustments. This is now filed in district court, asking, like you said, for the same kind of relief. Someone needs to look at this, right?
And we've asked that the court actually, and this is kind of how belts and suspenders approach to this, because we asked the court, don't do anything. The proper procedure, we believe, because this is a little unusual, but we believe the proper procedure is for this to go through the ZBA first. And under Texas law, the Fairview United has to exhaust its administrative remedies before it can go to court. So we asked them, look, just put everything on hold as far as the lawsuit goes until the ZBA renders its opinion.
Did you have to file in the district court by a certain time? Is it a time limit that drives this, or?
Well, there is. It's a bit confusing because the deadlines run when you're appealing a decision from the ZBA. Well, the ZBA hasn't ruled. There are provisions for filing an appeal from a district or from a town council decision, but the problem is those deadlines run from the date that the town council posts. They'll have a written opinion, a written variance or a written order, and it has to be in writing, it has to be signed, and it has to be posted at their office. This has never been posted at their office. So technically, it hasn't even started yet.
And that's such a good point. It's funny because I looked at my calendar and I had written down June 2nd was the last Tuesday was going to be the day of the final town council vote on the CUP. Of course, we know, I just had forgotten to erase it because of course the vote, the LDS Church had requested, let's expedite this. We want the, sitting council. There was a new council coming in. Sometimes I kind of wonder if that push to sort of, let's get things done fast. Let's do it. Let's get it through. I just wonder if that caused a little bit of, maybe due diligence wasn't done on making sure that some of the percentages were correct in the protest. So I don't know. I mean, in my opinion, I feel like anytime you rush something may be overlooked or not done as well as it could have been. So I don't know that that's the fact, but the LDS Church, for those of you that aren't familiar, because there was a new mayor, several new council members coming in May, they wanted to get this done. Now they had not entered their application for the CUP in with the city in a time frame that everyone expected it. And so after the fact, the city was very kind and said, yep, go ahead, we'll do it quicker. But I just wonder, it's possible when you're rushed, sometimes things fall through the cracks.
Well, it's the change in the town council.
Yeah.
That has made things more complicated as if they needed to be. Because Dr. Hubbard, who is now the mayor of the booming metropolis of Fairview, he voted against this. against the application.
Yeah, he was one of the ones that voted.
He was
no.
one of the ones that voted
Yeah,
no.
he was. That's very interesting.
And when he he gave an interview to it's a new news organization down in Houston.
Houston Chronicle.
The Houston Chronicle.
Yes.
Says Fairview United. Thank you.
He stated that the reason, at least in his opinion, that the town council voted the way they did was because they were concerned about being sued.
Interesting.
Not by me, but by the LDS Church.
Yeah.
And that's something that we don't believe should have been a driving factor in this at all. But whether it actually was, and whether it caused things to be sped up so that maybe this wasn't vetted the way it should have been, I don't know.
Yeah, well, the threat of lawsuit is always there. We follow other temple building towns, and we have people, I think of Lone Mountain, where one of the planning and zoning said, we just can't afford another lawsuit. So my vote's yes. I mean, he said it out loud. So of course, a city who needs to be fiscally responsible and knows that there is, this huge possibility, because the threat has been made out loud in Fairview. I think it happened it did happen the very first time they met. So I think that's got to be a factor. So now I know Landon is kind of working on possibly being able to pull up a copy of that appeal. I don't know if that'll happen.
Yeah, I'll try here in a second, but I do want to point out here that this is the same thing that happened in Cody, Wyoming, except the opposite. In Cody, Wyoming, the Planning and Zoning Board there voted, I think it was 3-2 for the temple application for the CUP, and they ruled that it did not meet the requirement because it was not a majority of the board, because some of the board members weren't there. This church then sued basically in district court, the same thing that's happening here. And the district court judge said, we're going to follow what has happened in the past in Cody, which is that if the majority of the people aren't there, you go off of the majority that are there. And so at that point, Cody found out that it had actually passed before they even had the hearings. It had passed, unfortunately, because they continued to have hearings for the next 4 or 5 months because they had determined it hadn't passed yet. That allowed the church to start building, or the church did start building, but that decision by the district court has been heard now by the Wyoming Supreme Court. And we're waiting to hear back on that.
It's still going. Now, hold on one second, Landon. Fairview United is bringing up a good point that possibly we can't show that right now. That might have to be something later. So maybe we'll just hold off on that and keep discussing. Fairview United, do you have any comments to weigh in here? This has been quite a long journey, and here we are at this point.
I think Mark has summarized it well. Ultimately, we want to be good neighbors to everyone in Fairview. We care about our ordinances being upheld. We love our town. We love our religious community. And our message has always been one of peace. So I absolutely love that Mark has framed this as a procedural error. And that's what we're focusing on here. And so we are excited to announce this on Mormonish today. And we are so excited to just hopefully put this behind us. This is a step forward for us.
Yep. And you as Fairview United, you have a webpage. Is it fairviewunited.org? I've been there so many times. It just populates my browser.
.net.
.net. Okay.
Yes. Yep.
Yeah. And there is, and I do have people all the time in comments and messaging me saying, is Fairview United taking any kind of donations to help now that there is legal action? Why don't you talk about that just a little bit, how people could help? Because I do get asked that all the time. Is there a way to help Fairview United?
Yes. And you know what? Everybody actually across the nation, there's been so many people across the nation that have contributed to us. And that's what's actually made us be able to do this today. And so if you go to fairviewunited.net, you can make a donation to us. We do have a goal in mind, and what we're looking for is just, whatever you can give. But in our own community, we're asking 200 people to give $100. And if that's, but any contribution helps. We are all giving our own money and time to this as well. And Mark has been very generous. And so, yeah, I think everybody, when they see this, it represents so much more than Fairview. It represents Cody, Wyoming. It represents,
Yeah,
you guys have been
it
like
does.
the library of temples across the United States. But I think we all feel that just that hurt and we want to come together collectively and we want to see the right thing done.
Yeah, no, you're known as the little town that could, and you keep on, coulding, and all the other temple busting towns, you are an inspiration to them, as far as this. But so yeah, everybody go to fairviewunited.net, and I think you'll probably have updated information about what's happening, kind of covering what we've been talking about here, the actual appeal and now the lawsuit. And maybe we could talk a little bit, and Mark can probably speak to this. What are the possible outcomes here? What could happen? What are we looking at here?
Well, most immediately, what I think should happen is that the district court will put the brakes on and say, okay, we're not going to rule, because that's one of the things we've asked. Don't rule until the ZBA has the opportunity to look at this and give us their opinion of what the effect was of this 5-2 vote. Because in my opinion, the 5-2 vote was a vote against the application. But first, we believe the ZBA should give its opinion, because we've got to exhaust our administrative remedies. Mm-hmm. That is our initial remedy. In the event that the ZBA says, well, either no, Mark, we don't agree with you, or we're just not sure. And the we're just not sure is a real possibility, because the code, it's the local government code that is supposed to apply to a situation like this just does not. It's such a squirrely factual scenario. I'm not surprised that there are holes in it that are to which our facts would apply. So the ZBA may just say, we don't know. And they may ask the Attorney General's office for some guidance. Now, the Attorney General's office does not have to give an opinion letter. We would like it if they did, just because we think that would be a lot less expensive than going through litigation. But they don't have to. So we may just say, okay, let's take it to the district court where we already are. But until those procedural steps are passed, we really don't want the court to do anything. We understand that the town wanted us to file a lawsuit because that is a cleaner way to resolve this. And the town doesn't have to, go out on a limb and give a legal decision, which they may not be qualified to give, because that's not their job. They're not courts.
And I think that was one of the questions. Who even has the authority to weigh in on this? Is it the zoning board of adjustment? That's even a question. Who legally can say yes or no? I mean, it's such uncharted waters, which I guess is how new codes and new ordinances are written, because, until it happens to you, you're like, yeah, there are holes in that.
Yeah.
And this is so unusual.
Well, that's a good point, because that was one thing that at the town council hearing meeting last Thursday, that was a point that was brought up, that they don't know whether the ZBA has the authority to overrule the town council's decision. Well, okay, the local government code doesn't address that issue.
And no one's really overriding their decision. They're overriding their interpretation of the decision, right? Because they said 5-2, it passes because we don't need a supermajority, because we included the area inside of Allen City And you guys are saying, no, you needed 6-1 to make it pass because Allen City should have been excluded because codes written in Fairview do not apply to Allen residents, and Allen residents could never have said or they weren't notified. And even if they were and they had protested, you wouldn't have counted it because of the fact that they were not Fairview residents. Therefore, if they're not Fairview residents and they can't have a say, they should be excluded from the count.
That's exactly right. That is
Very good,
exactly the problem that we have, because from Fairview standpoint, they don't know what to do, and I don't blame them.
Exactly.
To me, it makes what you just said makes perfect sense. That if you have people in another city and they never get notice of this CUP application, they don't have the authority to file a protest against that CUP. Why would you include them in their land to calculate the denominator for the protest zone?
Yeah.
It doesn't make sense, but it's such a squirrely issue. It's just something that whoever wrote the codes, you couldn't have expected them to.
Yeah.
No, you never could have. And it's interesting because I know several of these towns where temples come and bring up all these issues do then rewrite after the fact. They shore up their codes and ordinances just because of that. But I think you made a very good point at the beginning that the town welcomes the scrutiny of it because they want to do it right. They want to fix it. They want to know it going forward. They say, please help us, through this legal process, determine, what this is, because they want to do it right. They don't want something to pass that, didn't really pass. So
Dr. Hubbard has been very clear on that.
Yeah.
Says, look, we just want to have one answer.
Yep.
We want one ruling that we can all rely upon. And in the event this ever comes up again, which don't expect to see it anywhere.
I know.
Then you have some guidance.
Yeah.
The fact that the code doesn't specifically address this is not surprising.
Yeah, no, I agree because it's just like this anomaly kind of a thing. But
You'll
I know
never
the
see it
town
again.
has said things before about the healing of the town after it, because there have been a lot of emotions through this, and if it were to, I don't know, be built under these circumstances, there would be a large amount of people that would say that it wasn't passed, just based on procedures. So like Dr. Hubbard says, you need an authoritative answer so that everybody can say, well, that's how it is.
Yeah.
And then move forward. That's the only way. It has to start from there. It's too nebulous the other way.
And we agree with him along those lines, because the last thing we want is, if I'm right, we don't want the church, to think, oh, geez, we got, we were cheated.
Yes.
And the troublemakers aren't us. It's Fairview United, or worse, it's Mark Johnson.
Yeah.
Which you can throw him under the bus. But you don't want that. You want a decision that everyone, like it or don't like it, everyone can get behind. Because one thing, about this whole situation to me is it's confusing, and it's emotionally charged.
Mm-hmm.
And we know that when in the interview that I gave to Channel 8, at the end of the interview, they had a picture of a woman carrying a protest sign.
Yeah.
And it said, "Say no to religious bullying." I thought that she was a Fairview United lady.
No, isn't that funny?
And her sign could just as easily have applied to either side.
Yep.
Okay, we don't need that. We don't need it, because this is not about bullying on anyone's side. This is simply procedural. What happens? What is the effect of a 5-2 vote under these unusual factual scenarios?
That's right. And you had mentioned before, did the LDS Church weigh in a comment, something about it doesn't involve us? I think I remember you saying something like that. And that's important to bring up again. You know, I think understand it too. This is the town working out its stuff.
Well, and I hope that they, as this plays out, I hope they continue to agree with that.
Yeah.
Because we're not looking for a fight.
Mm-mm.
Once we get the final decision on what this 5-2 vote meant, then that's it.
Mm-hmm.
And we don't have to, there's not going to be any further appeals. There's not going to be any further applications. There's not going to be any further hard feelings. It was simply procedural and we move on. I hope the church feels that way. Because otherwise we're just in for another fight. And if that happens, we've got more hard feelings that the city doesn't need.
Yeah, and we've seen that in other towns for sure. And I mean, I think the town has said things like, you know, this is not about the temple. It could impact the temple, but it's about our procedures and our voting and understanding the meaning of what happened. So yeah, it's a really unusual situation. And I try to think in my mind, okay, if whoever the authority ends up being does say, yes, we interpret a 5-2 to be a non-pass, you know, I don't know what would happen next. I don't think anybody can speak to that, but that would just have to happen when it happens. Once you get that decision from whatever authority we decide there is, that it, you know, it was not passed.
Well, you know, Fairview is such a small town. At least in my research, this has never happened.
Yeah.
This issue of whether it's a simple majority or it's a supermajority, whether the ZBA has authority to override the town council, who knows? It's never come up. And the code, I mean, if this were Dallas, maybe it would be more specific because you have a lot more history to look at.
Yeah.
Fairview, nobody knows. We just want an answer that will allow us to move forward.
This is like the NFL going to New York for the review, but nobody's quite sure if it's New York you're supposed to go to or Chicago or who are you supposed to go to get the review, but it needs to be reviewed. So.
Yeah, but these are big questions. And as we watch other towns where temples are being built, these things, strange questions arise, you know, because the church is building in very affluent but small city government, you know, areas, and they don't deal with things exactly what Mark just said. So we've seen this over and over where the town's like, I guess we better look at this. We've never had to deal with it. So it's interesting.
I'm thinking through this right now, and I know in Heber, the Heber Temple is on county land, but completely surrounded by city land.
Yep.
And so their lawsuit right now is hinging on the same thing. Do the people who are protesting have standing because they're in the city and the land is county land?
Yeah, and that's up for summary judgment, whether the residents who are suing, and in that town, Heber and the church have joined together against the residents against Heber and the church, because the church then will often support the town in a lawsuit because their land is involved.
And then in Las Vegas, you had the temple was BLM land that got sold and then became county land, which they then rezoned into the city, but it's surrounded, I think, one or two sides is by county land. So this being right on the border of county and city, or two different cities, seems to be quite common because they tend to buy these big lots and then incorporate them into the city. That wasn't the case here in Fairview. It was always in the city, but border disputes seem to be an issue in a couple of these cases anyway, because they are on the border.
You're right that
county land.
That the church's land was always in the town, but the protest zone.
Yep.
And interestingly, the people from Allen came, to all the council meetings. They weighed in, not legally, but they spoke at Fairview meetings, and Fairview United, there can attest to that. We had lots of Allen residents, didn't we? Coming in and giving their opinion about the temple. But legally, they can't say anything. They're not on the tax rolls. There's no way that they can make any kind of statement legally.
Well, they can make a
Dr.
statement.
Hubbard.
It doesn't cover it. It doesn't bear any weight because.
Right. That's what I'm saying. Legally,
yeah.
it has no standing. They're invisible as far as that. Yeah.
Dr. Hubbard made a comment about that. He said that the town council, that they considered the wishes of the surrounding property owners, the Allenites. Well, maybe they did, but all they got was people showing up at the town council at the meeting and saying, no, we'd rather not have that. What they didn't get was the right to protest, as the Fairview folks had the right to do. And so we're stuck with a simple majority as opposed to a supermajority.
Yeah, that's all it is.
That's the issue that we're addressing. And that's the only issue.
That's the only issue. It seems very clear cut, but then I thought a lot of things were clear cut. I thought 5 letters of, protest out of 9 houses. At first I thought that's easy. And then I realized not so easy. So yeah, it'll be really interesting to watch this going forward. And I know there are some meetings now scheduled with the Zoning Board of Adjustment. Like I said, they now have counsel supplied to them by the Fairview Town Council. So they're going to be working through it. There'll be, I think, even some public comment. Maybe there'll be a series, I think, of meetings trying to figure this out. But now we add this on top of it. A lawsuit filed, on behalf of Fairview United, in the district court. So we don't know what's going to happen, do we?
Well, I would think that things will heat up.
Yeah.
In short order.
Yeah.
And that's because whether through the appeal or through the district court lawsuit, that puts the brakes on any building. And so the church cannot move forward with building its temple. I'm sure they're anxious to find out, because if they have the right to build it, they want to build it. If they don't have the right to build it, then the property owners that are around there, they want to know.
Yeah.
So hopefully we'll have an answer before too long. Now, what that answer will be, I think I know what it should be, right. But I don't write the laws any more than I don't write the laws.
And that answer could be a springboard to who knows what we can't even really imagine. And I found it surprising in one of the articles that I read, the church representative said, we weren't even aware this was happening. And I thought, wow, we've been talking about this. So it's the very first meeting, when kind of this issue was raised. So do you get a sense?
Can I ask you what it was that they said they weren't aware of?
This whole thing, the 200 feet, it was an earlier article, but all of it. They said we were not aware of that. In one of the earlier articles,
were not aware that there was the dispute over whether
yes. In one of the in one of the earlier articles, I read that, and I thought that's very surprising, because I myself have been talking about it and even showing clips from one of the town council meetings where the letter from Joel was read and all of that. So I thought it's out there, so interesting. But I was bringing that up to ask Fairview United. Do you get a sense that residents there in Fairview know this is kind of going on, or LDS residents, do they just kind of think, oh, the temple's being built? I mean, does anyone know? It's a very complicated issue. So
I will see.
There aren't a whole lot of LDS people in Fairview.
Yeah, I guess that's true.
Yeah, we believe that the number is actually closer to maybe less than 100. But as far as the rest of residents, we've continued to make a presence at every single town council meeting, public hearing. We have a calendar and follow very closely. And actually, every chance we get, we are talking to town council about this, which we know that the broadcast goes out and tons of people everywhere are watching these meetings. So
isn't that funny? They are.
Yes. Yeah. And we have online presence. We have a newsletter. We have, everybody talks on Nextdoor, but the community is aware. But some of this also was very We needed to do a due diligence and we needed to do research and take time to do this properly. And so that's what we've done. And now that we have facts, that's what we're bringing forward. And we want everybody to know about this.
Yep, it's important, and to explain it in a clear way, and especially explain it is just about a procedure. And we just want to make sure that, the town wants to make sure everything's done right. All the I's are dotted, T's are crossed, and residents want to make sure everything's done. And once that's all determined, then there you go. Then you move forward, whatever happened. So it's just due diligence, I think.
Yep,
that's it.
All right.
Wow. Well, I think we've covered it. I hope everybody understands. I'll link some other episodes in the show notes where we went over some things like maps and appeals. Again, we didn't show those today just because it's kind of in motion here, but we do have some other things. So Landon, do you have any final thoughts? It's very interesting. It's kind of a wait and see, isn't it? There's so many moving parts and anything can happen.
Yeah, no, I just think, it needs to be answered, obviously, because it's clear if you take Allen out, they had the majority that they needed to force a supermajority, and it did not pass. So the question has to be answered. I looked at this when it came out, and I was trying to figure out, I'm going, but I was only looking at Fairview area, and I'm going, I don't see any way this is not under 20%. I had no idea they were counting Allen area as well. So anyway, appreciate you guys coming on today and taking time out of your Saturday to bring that. I've got a light flashing.
I was going to say, you have a poltergeist in there as you're talking about Fairview.
It looks like in one of my lights here. So
it's a kind of mojo going on there. So and we want to make sure that everybody, if you want more information, go to fairviewunited.net. It's an excellent resource. It's a website they've kept up since the very beginning, and they have, you can follow along the whole story of everything that's happening. And importantly, you can make a contribution if you'd like to. Like I said, I've had many people reach out and say, how do I support these guys? And now that they do have an attorney, the wonderful Mark Johnson, and there's an appeal to the zoning board, the zoning board of adjustment, and there's a lawsuit filed with district court. Of course, financial support would be really, really appreciated by Fairview United. So, all right. I think we did it. Thank you guys both for being on. And we will, please leave us a comment, everybody. Let us know what you think about this ongoing saga. I feel like someday someone should do a documentary about the entire thing. It's just a lot, it's a case study in a small town, and, it's really interesting. So if you'd like to be made aware of when new episodes of Mormonish come out, you can hit the notification bell. If you would like to help financially support Mormonish Podcast, we always have links in the show notes to Donor Box, where we are a nonprofit. And we also have links to our merch store. We've got Mormonish mugs if you want to read and learn all about Fairview while sipping your coffee out of
one of those.
I know, we got to send you one. Yeah, we're a big fan of yours. So anyway, again, thank you, Fairview United representative, and thank you, Mark. You're doing a great job here, and we were going to hear more from you, I'm sure, going forward. Thanks again, Landon, for co-hosting. We'll see everybody next time.
There is one thing I'd like to add.
Oh, please.
For your viewers, whether you're in Fairview or you're not in Fairview, whether you're a member of the LDS Church or you're not, stay calm. That is the problem that we're having in Fairview. You've got some people who are getting a little overworked over this. Let the legal, and I know the wheels of justice turn slowly, but they do turn.
They do.
Give us the opportunity to go through this in an orderly, efficient manner, and we'll have the answer that everyone needs, and then we can move on. Yep. But in the time being, just stay calm.
Let's try it. Stay calm, move on. It's summer. Everybody go to the lake or something, and Mark will keep working it behind the scenes, and so will the legal process, and then we'll have an answer. I think that's the best advice. So
thank you so much.
All right, everybody. We'll see y'all next time on Mormonish. Thank you.
Take care.
Thanks for joining us for another episode of Mormonish. We really appreciate our listeners and would love to hear from you if you have a story you'd like to share. You can email us at mormonishpodcast@gmail.com. You can also find us on Facebook, Instagram, and on our website, mormonishpodcast.org. And don't forget to look for us on YouTube and like and subscribe. Keep joyful, everybody.